Welcome in to this latest edition of Making the Leap with an announcement, a sudden announcement for those of you that download the show and regularly listen. It is not really something we didn't know was coming, but it is something that we decided to share with you after we took our trip on the road to Dallas and had a nice couple of episodes I hope you enjoyed at the NRB. We've done a lot of work here. We've had a lot of great episodes. We just crested 150 episodes.
Amazing.
We have talked to fascinating folks. We have explored lots of different subjects over the course of these last now almost 3 years of doing this show. And it was kind of our decision internally that today's show would in fact be our last show.
Yes. Not without a lot of prayer and thought, I think, just so it's nothing bad happened. There's no dramatic story. There's none of that. It was just, it's time, you just feel convicted.
As our one of the gentlemen that helps us kind of run and operate the Herzog Foundation day in and day out, Chris Voss, said, when have you guys officially made the leap? And I said, well, I guess we did some time ago,
We did.
And in all sincerity, after 3 years, that was kind of one of the points of starting this show was we were brand new to Christian education. We knew nothing about it. We really didn't even know the Herzog Foundation very well. And so as we partnered with the foundation to start a podcast, and if you go back to those early shows, I mean, we literally started in my old office before we even had a beautiful studio like we have now. And you and I just started kind of spitballing, talking about what it meant to us to take our daughter out of a public school, put her in a private Christian school, and the things we were learning. And over 3 years, we've learned a lot.
We have. Absolutely. I think that's been part of this decision, at least for me personally, as we've talked about this and kind of said, when does this part of it stop? When does the podcast part of this stop? And I think one of the biggest pushes for it to stop is so that you and I can go on to whatever that next thing is, different projects, things like that. And had we not done that in the beginning, kind of searching out, what is it we're supposed to be doing? What is this all about? This making the leap. The whole idea was stepping out into something that we didn't know, that we were very unfamiliar with. And so I think that's this next part. I feel like it is a good place to stop because our kids, gosh, we had our daughter was 7th grade.
Yeah, that's why.
And now we're talking about college.
Yeah.
So it feels like it's very, it just feels good to say we're ready to go to this next place.
Yeah, and she went from being a girl who would come in here and sit with us and talk with us to a girl that wants us to not even mention her on this show.
Yes, which is fair.
That's
and actually
16.
One of our big, I would say for us, for me personally as the mom, I know you and I have had this conversation. I think that is one of our specific things is that I do want to we are in a place where I think our kids are now just older and they're in control of what, they should be in control a little bit of what is out there about them. And I think that's a primary piece.
I will say also, here's something that I've learned, and I hope, as people review this show and previous shows, that is really what I hope more than anything else is that people will go back and review the body of work over these last 3 years, even though some of the production elements in the early shows were rough. Not so much the visual or even how it sounded or the stuff around it. I hope that the content is substantive for you if you are, in fact, thinking about doing this, making the leap as we did, as so many other parents have. And if I were to be wholly honest with you, as I've said on previous shows, if we were to do it all over again and we had children who were much younger, we would have thought about parenting entirely differently, and we didn't. And so I hope that God put us in this place to reach even a handful of people, maybe over the last 3 years, to think differently about the way they're going to bring up their kids. I hope. Maybe that's patting ourselves on the back and saying that, but I hope that happened.
No, I think that's very true, and
Hope it can still happen.
Right,
Hope you can still go back, and that's why
that
we're
digital library is very important.
Keep these shows up at the Herzog Foundation website, and you can continue to review this podcast. That channel stays, and we hope it'll continue to be a resource because we want people to continue to think about this stuff if they haven't been.
I had actually somebody reached out a couple of weeks ago and they said, what was that episode where you talked to the mom who did the school and her basement, the art? And I knew exactly what she was talking about. And I went searching, pulled it up, sent it on, and I started laughing because it was one of those much earlier episodes that we had done. But I thought, that's amazing. A year and a half, almost 2 years later.
Yeah.
And that that episode can help somebody else. That's just been a privilege. When you talk about patting ourselves on the back, I don't want to do that. It's been a privilege.
Yes, it is.
And not without responsibility, because I don't ever want to send somebody on, go do this. It's simple, it's easy. I think that's been the crux of what we've talked about, is that in some ways it's very simplistic. You know what you need to do, and you do it. But in some ways, there was so much about it that we didn't understand. We didn't know. Other people didn't know. Other people could come alongside us and help us and guide us, which is where a giant amount of our guests came from. We're pulling from people that were doing across the country, doing amazing things that really offered that daily encouragement to us. So I think that's diving into that, all those back episodes, I think was big.
And I hope previous episodes also show that there are tremendous people doing big things in Christian education. That this idea of it being, I think as a friend of ours once joked, women with buns in denim jumpers and denim skirts. Those days are gone.
That is not the deal. Right?
The whole image, I think, in the preconceived notions people have about Christian education or private school or homeschooling, I hope in some small part the show also chipped away at that a little bit.
Right. I mean, as we talk, even as you say that, I start laughing because I think about private school, and we've had this conversation multiple times. There are people who think fancy, everyone's got money. And sure, there are some schools like that. Our parking lot would show a huge array of cars, the incomes, the family makeup, the structure. But then there are schools with 10 families, and it's tiny, and it is not at all about a $30,000 or $40,000 tuition bill every year, and I think just kind of eliminating some of those stereotypes has been important. I think it's an important step of that making the leap process, not just in terms of what school you pick, but in terms of what your expectations are.
So many great options exist today that it's not, gosh, if there's one thing that I took away from this, and I hope people will go back and review shows, it does not have to be a big private school. In fact, we've talked to many of our homeschool friends that don't believe in that at all.
Right.
And really want to go back to a traditional homeschool setting and believe not even a Christian school is the way to go. But then within Christian schools, there's so many different divisions of the kinds of Christian learning you can do. The homeschools, the pod schools, there are so many choices. I say that 1,000 times a day, it seems, when this subject comes up and people ask me about it. Please don't think about Christian education as just some big private school with hundreds or thousands of kids who are paying private school tuition. Yes, it's that. It can be that. But there's so many hundreds, maybe thousands of schools around the country that aren't that.
Right.
That
Absolutely.
are operating on a shoestring, maybe with volunteers, but a network of parents and teachers, some of whom are volunteering their time or virtually volunteering their time for very little pay to bring up kids in an educational setting in a neighborhood.
Treating it as a ministry. That's been an idea that's come up multiple times. Really looking at this as kingdom work. And that's where I hope as parents continue to think about this or look at this, that's at the base of the desire.
And
to make that leap.
In those early shows, we met people who wanted to start their own to that point. And that's, back to the parent organization that is the Herzog Foundation that brought us here.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And so any opportunity that I get, and, I fully intend on my broadcast show, my national radio show now, and with the Salem News Channel, I intend to continue to talk about the Herzog Foundation as much as and as often as I can, because after all, that is the point. That's why we're here, is this organization is a wealth of information and opportunity to plug into to get your own school started or guide you to homeschooling. That's its entire mission. So,
I do that a lot. It's funny when I'll get messages on Facebook or Instagram. Is there a program about this? Is there a training about this? And I'll go in and search and find things. And, that is a piece of it that, if I had to stake my belief in, that's huge. Yeah. That's a part of it, is giving a foundation to the teachers, to the parents, to the administration of these schools, because they've got to all be together on that. And they're all in different places, with their backgrounds and their learning and their education. And so I think the training programs, and as we've had Sadie Elliott on multiple times talking about it, how it's grown.
Yes.
Where it started is it's so far beyond from where it started, which I love.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch the infancy of this show grow. It's been fun to watch the infancy of the foundation grow and blossom and explode to what it is today. We're only 3 years in, really doing this show, and who knows where it will go in another 3 to 5 years.
That's something that happened a lot in Dallas when we were out there with one of our one of our ambassadors, and a couple other individuals.
At the NRB, yeah.
What did I call it?
No, you said Dallas.
Yeah,
I just
Dallas at the NRB.
What we were doing there.
That was fun. At the table, people were coming up and they were saying like, "Oh yeah, I've heard about you. Tell me what you're doing here." It was just so different from the year prior where
nobody knew us.
Was not as common. So now I just think that's huge. That's an amazing, amazing benefit. That is a God's hand for sure.
There are a tremendous number of people in this foundation that do work that maybe you haven't met. We've had a few of them on the show to tell you the kind of different work they do. But boy, there are a number of people. I'd say there are somewhere between 40 and 50.
I was thinking 30. So you're probably right because you see.
Yeah, that might be closer to 40, 30 to 40.
40-ish.
But some of them are hired out of state. Most of them are still here in the building, and they work on things like our social media. They work on things like our marketing. They work on helping to raise funds for scholarship opportunities through programs like Mo Scholars.
The Lion.
And then, of course, the Lion is the thing that I personally am going to be spending more of my time helping to develop. We've taken the Lion show, and now we're broadcasting it on a couple of radio stations in Kansas City and St. Louis, which is really exciting, and we're seeing the website grow. We've taken some trips to Washington, D.C., and done some field work for the Lion. This is a tremendous ministry unto itself, really, for the Herzog Foundation, because it's real news, honest-to-goodness news you can get that you can trust, written by people who are principled and have the Word of God as their undergirding when they report and write, and you can know that and feel confident about it. So a lot of my energies personally are going to be pouring into the Lion projects in the future and looking really very forward to that. But my point is that there are people that work very, very hard all day long to keep the foundation running, and also, by the way, make shows like this one. And
the technical piece of this, people would come and ask me, "How do you talk to me about this podcast?" And I just said, I can talk to you about the emailing and looking for guests. But beyond that, I cannot, because if it weren't for the people behind the scenes, the cameras, the equipment, I don't understand any of that.
No. So we have to thank our friends and our colleagues, Noah Hoskins, Matt Wacker, and Jordan Vanderplate,
100%.
Among others, who have done yeoman's work in trying to make this thing look good every day. They set up all the lights and all the cameras, and they move all the stuff. And Noah and Matt and occasionally Jordan has also joined and helped. And then, members of the team who've come in and participated.
Oh, I mean, sitting down with some of the individuals that would work on just social media, which, I always had this love-hate with social media, this relationship where I like it for what I like it for, and then beyond that, I don't. And so I specifically had some wonderful people working with me a lot. And so just kind of a thank you. And there's really too many to mention, but specifically, there's Valerie, who shows up sometimes with the Lion show. She's been amazing. Alexandra, and early on, we had great help and support, just as we were kind of all figuring out how everything fit. And so, too many names to sit and mention, but I'm grateful that they invested just as we invested.
Yeah, we want to thank the board of the Herzog Foundation, Todd and Kristen and John. These folks really enjoyed the show. They believed in the show and the concept of the show, and they said, well, let's do a show. And that was a real surprise, honestly. Yes. I mean, and then when we were in contact with them to start this project, we really didn't know what it meant or where it would go. We were the very, very first podcast offering of the Herzog Foundation.
Yeah.
So, that's a little bittersweet in that we were the first ones. But now we've got a whole network of great podcasts, and we'll continue to grow and develop new ones and different ones. And so, everything, all good things, I guess, must come to an end. And it's time to step aside and let new shows develop and come up and grow.
But I just kind of just bring us back to that idea of, I was thinking actually when you said that when we were out at the first Teacher Awards out in DC, which is that's been an amazing event to get to go to. We were out to dinner with Daryl Jones, who's the president of the Herzog Foundation, for people that don't know. And he sat down, he's so enthusiastic and he's so just effusive with things. And he said, "So Christine, what's next? What's next?" And I said, I don't know. We're just going to keep talking. We're going to keep talking. And I think I love that approach to things. And I think if we've benefited from something, it's been that kind of like, awesome. What's next? And so I don't think there's many people that get to work on creative type projects where that free reign has kind of been given and that enthusiasm has been behind it. And so that's been a tremendous boost, I think, for us.
And then I will say to you, my wife, I am profoundly proud of you and the work you have done and the time you've put into this project, because I know how violently uncomfortable you were with the concept of starting a podcast. I've done this my entire career. It's all I've ever wanted to do. So I feel at home doing this. But when we were having a discussion about starting a show with cameras and you've had to be very patient with me because this is something that it's just what I do. Whether I do it well or not is up for discussion, but I'm not uncomfortable with it. You were very uncomfortable with it. And over 3 years, you've grown to be so comfortable with it. And I have, what is remarkable about you and what's come out of this is not just that you sit here and do this show, but I have seen you witness to other families, particularly younger women than us, who are trying to decide what to do with their children. I've heard women thank you for your guidance to them, and I think you have really touched some lives in a profound way. I've watched it, so I want to tell you how proud I am of you for doing this project and how great you've done, and I hope you feel good about the time that you've invested in this project, because I know it's touched lives, and I have enjoyed working alongside you.
Well, I will not try to follow that except to say thank you, because it has been a pleasure for people who don't think you can sit and work with something like this with your spouse. Being, it doesn't leave. You're at home. It's late at night. You think, we're talking back and forth. I don't think I could have gotten up there and talked. You make it look easy. I know that it's not, and it's been pretty awesome to sit and see this side of you at work on a weekly basis that I think a lot of spouses don't get to get. They don't get to have, so I appreciate that very much.
Well, I love you.
Oh, I love you.
And I think that's where we're going to leave it. We love this audience. We do. Such that it is. Those of you that regularly listen, we cannot thank you enough for your regular listenership. We know that there were many people that actually made this an appointment, and they told us so.
Yes.
And we are flattered and thrilled and honored that you downloaded the show each and every week and listened to it. But the work doesn't stop. This is a ministry. We really believe this is the hands and feet of Christ, and that never stops. Just because a podcast comes to an end, that doesn't mean anything. Our work, your work, continues on, and the work of the Herzog Foundation will continue on, and you'll see us around, I'm sure, in other capacities. But that'll put to bed this final edition and this run on Making the Leap. So, thank you very much for joining us and being a part of our family and a little look into our world over the last 3 years. It's been a real honor. And until we see you pop up around here at the foundation again, thanks a lot for listening to Making the Leap.
Making the Leap is a podcast presentation courtesy of the Herzog Foundation. We'd love your feedback by rating us and commenting on the show.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Making the Leap.